Tell me about the books behind you.
All right. Well, we've got my first book is from Monk to Money Manager over here. That came out in 2019. So I got a two-book deal from HarperCollins. They gave me I won the literary lottery, as people say. And then my second, and that's really from Monk to Money Manager. The subtitle is A Former Monk's Financial Guide to Becoming a Little Bit Wealthy and Why That's Okay. So it's a kind of a how-to book. I use my story as my time in the monastery, the lessons I learned, my time as an investment advisor, and all the things there that I picked up. And I use those stories as a hook to be entertaining and kind of a little bit funny to teach people, just the basics of financial literacy. How do you, or what are the basics of saving, investing, taxes, insurance, the real nuts and bolts of what you need to know in order to have a robust, solid financial life in terms of the practical how-tos. And
Yeah.
now my second book, Taming Your Money Monster, Nine Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram. And that's one I'm really excited about, eager to promote because it's really a why do book.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hirsch Redfin.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world
Yes.
or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
I am speaking today on the Yes Brand Podcast, our very special season 7 of the Yes Brand Podcast with Doug Lynam. I'm going to share the official blurb with you guys because I always think it's valuable. From Marine to Benedictine monk to financial expert, Doug Lynam's unconventional journey reflects his unique perspective on wealth and purpose. After graduating top of his class from the Marine Corps Officer Candidate School, Doug spent 2 decades as a monk, which I love that sentence. It's like that's what most people do when they graduate Marine Corps Officer Candidate School is they say, well, let me first get in my 20 years of monktude and then, while leading a prestigious school's math department. Transitioning to finance in 2017, he became a partner at LongView Asset Management, overseeing $250 million in assets. Doug's best-selling book, From Monk to Money Manager, a former monk's financial guide to becoming a little bit wealthy and why that's okay, revolutionized the conversation around spirituality and wealth, proving that financial success and ethical living go hand in hand, not just coexisting, but enhancing each other. His latest work is Taming Your Money Monster, Nine Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram. Doug combines the Enneagram with modern psychology to help individuals transform their financial behaviors. Today, he's the sought after speaker and coach who helps clients align money with their deepest values and purpose. Okay, Doug, welcome. Welcome officially to the
Thank you,
season
Hirsch.
7 Yes Brand podcast. Okay. There is so much great stuff to talk about. We touched on a little bit the money monster, taming the money monster, some of the mistakes we make around money. You say that with this new book, it sounds like you're really trying to understand how we can transform our behaviors because intellectually somehow we understand, oh, I have to do a better job of this. Oh, I'm entitled to this. What is the biggest, in the new book, what is the biggest stumbling block that you come across with people and money management?
Well, it's a big question. And so that was the thing, the big insight is that there isn't one thing, right? It's that it's unique to our personality type. So in the Enneagram, it's an ancient system. It goes back. It's sort of if you will, the physics of consciousness. It explains. So our personality has two components to it, right? We've got our nature, which is our DNA, which is kind of the stuff that we're pre-programmed with. And then there's our nurture, which is kind of how our childhood environment shapes our personality. And the Enneagram, it really explains the nurture portion of our personality. And so what we've learned, and it's sort of like, who discovered it, who first came up with this. It's a little bit like asking who first discovered mathematics or science. It goes all the way back. You can find it in the Iliad, the Odyssey, in Greeks, Egyptian culture, the nuggets of it. being teased out,
Yeah.
and also in religious traditions across cultures and religions for millennia. But really, only in the past 100 years have we really made significant progress in really wedding it to modern psychology. And now we've been able to wed it not just to modern psychology, but to early childhood development and into neurobiology. And so, what it tells us in a nutshell, I like to use car metaphors. I think they kind of resonate with people. Is you have to think about
Yeah.
your personality like a car. Every car is unique. Everyone's got a unique year, make, model, unique dents on the door, and bumper stickers, whatever. And there's an infinite variety of cars. You can design cars in an infinite number of ways, and yet there's a firm structure in which you have to. There's some rules you have to follow in order for a car to be roadworthy. And there's the same thing works for human personality. And so what the Enneagram tells you is a kind of what's the chassis or model of car of ego that you're driving in. It kind of puts us in these 9 archetypal patterns. And there's a real reason why there's 9 types, because there's basically 9 trauma responses to that we can have to growing up that we all have in order to develop an ego, to develop a sense of self or a shell, protective shell that differentiates what's me and what's not me in reality. And so that ego shell is like the model of car you're driving, and the Enneagram kind of gives you the user's manual to it. And so each type of personality is going to have different strengths and weaknesses. Just like if you're driving a Hummer, you might be great for off-road adventures, but you're probably not going to fit in a compact car space in the Whole Foods parking lot, right? So there's strengths and weaknesses to each type. Or if you've got a compact car, you're going to be great for some things and not for others. And so it's a long-winded way of saying, well, what's the struggles that we have? Well, what I've identified are 2 unique money monsters for each of the 9 Enneagram archetypal patterns of personality. And so maybe if I could just take a really high level view, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Hirsch, how much time do you want for this podcast? What was
I
our,
mean, we have about another 30 seconds. No, I'm kidding. We have an hour generally of recording time
okay,
for
just gives me,
these episodes. But
excellent.
I would say figure on 45-minute interview. So
Great. Okay. So yeah, if
quarter
we're
past the
20 and
hour.
30, great. I'll try to keep my answers succinct, and yet it's a complicated topic. So I just don't want to, I'll try to do my best to keep it short. So in other words, we've got these 9 archetypal patterns, which I can explain how those develop if we want to go into that. But the real high level view, kind of what the project I've been working on for the past 5 years is the thing that really I've been struggling with is how do you create an ethical system for understanding money and wealth that transcends religion, politics, and culture? What would be an ethical framework that anybody, regardless of what the religious or political viewpoints happen to be, could understand, appreciate, and hopefully adopt so that they're making wiser and healthier money decisions for themselves and for the world around them? And I tried a bunch of different experiments with that. I first worked with a system called spiral dynamics and integral theory, and I wasted a couple of years on that project, which was really complicated. And the book worked, but my publisher said, yeah, but no one's going to read it. It's too complicated, dense. And I kind of threw a Hail Mary pass, and I was like, well, I don't want to lose this book deal. So what else could I try to work with? And then I hit on the Enneagram. A good friend of mine, Richard Rohr, had been teaching me about it for years, but I hadn't really taken it too seriously until I had to write a book about it. And so I've really reinvented the Enneagram in a lot of ways for those who are familiar with it. I've restructured it from the ground up, created a much more linear, streamlined process for people to understand it. So it's really now kind of based in deductive logic and, as I said earlier, on neurobiology and childhood developmental psychology. It's kind of taken out of the woo-woo space where it doesn't feel like you're taking a horoscope or like some tarot reading or whatever. So it's really now we can say that this system works and it's reliable and it's robust. And then on top of the Enneagram, then what I've layered on top of it is what I call the attachment theory of money, which is very similar to the attachment theory of relationships, if anyone's familiar with that concept. But what it says in a nutshell is that we can have a healthy attachment to money, or we can have an unhealthy attachment to money. And so the book is
Right.
trying to get you to be healthy in your relationship to money in what I call the 4 pillars of finance, which are earning, saving, investing, and giving. So earning, saving, investing, giving are the kind of the 4 pillars. And we can have a healthy relationship in one area and an unhealthy relationship in another. And when it's unhealthy, it kind of manifests in one of 2 ways. We either overly anxiously attached to money, we kind of obsess about it, kind of the Ebenezer Scrooge mentality, where we're just maybe hyper fixated on wealth and it's causing suffering for ourselves and those around us. Or we can be avoidant, which is kind of how I was raised. And what I had to overcome was my money avoidance, which is this hatred of it or just a dislike of it and pushing it away. And one of the reasons why I joined a monastery for 20 years is I thought I was going to escape the world of money and materialism forever. I wanted nothing to do with it. But then the monastery went bankrupt about 3 years into my monastic journey, and somebody had to like figure that problem out. And surprise that landed on my head of all ironies. And I realized that there's no escaping it. You can't go to a monastery and escape money. It's going to follow you everywhere. So you better
Okay,
figure
well,
out,
yeah, go ahead. You better figure out what.
figure out
I'm
how to
sorry.
have a healthy relationship to it because it's not going
Okay.
anywhere.
Because here's the thing, Doug. That's like to me, and I was gonna say the next thing I was gonna just touch on is that, because the show is Yes Brand, we're obviously interested in your brand, right? The Monk Money Manager, let's say. But we're also interested in the other side of it, which is, well, for every successful brand, there's an audience. There's an
Yeah.
audience that's interested. And it is interesting to me, and I don't want to lose this thought. It's interesting to me that there's different people are in different situations. So someone who's older, let's say even not older like retirement age, but
Mm.
mid-career or whatever it might be. But there are more and more 65% of people, and I'll put the source in the show notes, but 65% of people right now who are retirement age can't afford to retire,
Right.
right? So, those people don't have the luxury of saying, okay, I'm going to manage my money right from the beginning because it's late
Right.
now and they've got
Sure.
to now figure out how to catch up. So I do want to address that. But I also want to look at the fact that as a monk, what you just said, the monastery, because you're giving up these material needs, you're certainly not worried about, but buying a new car with all of the
Right.
gadgets and right. So you're
But you
not
still
you're
got to
not,
fix the roof when it leaks.
but you still got to survive.
Right.
So first of all, how did the monastery go bankrupt?
Well, mostly it was just financial illiteracy. I think we took the vow of poverty a little too seriously. Like
Right.
we all had a very avoidant relationship to money. We all had this sort of thought that, St. Matthew says the love of money is the root of all evil. And there was even one monk, I call him Brother Pius, I talk about him in the book, who for many years refused to touch money or cash or credit cards or debit cards in any way, shape, or form because he thought that would propel him forward on the spiritual path. And it actually did the opposite. It created a kind of spiritual ego around money and made him feel a little bit superior to the rest of us who are running around all day trying to manage the money to keep food on the table and fix a leaking roof and
Yeah.
paying the medical bills that come up and all these things. And so rejecting money for the wrong reasons is just as bad as being hyper fixated on it for the wrong reasons. And so
Right.
for people who are to your question, people who are facing retirement, it's like, well, it's never too late to do better. Like it's not going to, you're in a harder spot if you're nearing retirement and haven't gotten your financial house in order. And yet there's still things you can do to improve your situation rather than perpetuating the same problem. So there are solutions, but you got to know what they are and start implementing them. And it's better late than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. My reaction when I heard you talk about the monk who had a bad, let's call it this way, he has a bad money story, right?
Right.
He's got a money story that is about how wicked it is, how wicked
Mhm.
wealth is, and how evil it is. And a lot of us have had that story. I have
Yeah.
that story to some extent from my childhood, being around a lot of people where the wealthiest people, in my mind, this doesn't mean it was actually true, but in my mind, the wealthiest people were doing something illicit to get that wealth.
Right.
And I've had to overcome that
Yeah.
story,
Me too.
and yeah, and this might be a good opportunity for you to share a little bit about your background and your early relationship with money for the audience.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in what felt like at the time a very affluent family. My father was a senior executive at an oil company and had a significant amount of disposable income. But when my parents divorced around seven or eight, kind of the family blew apart, and money became, from my limited childhood perspective, like I only had a limited perspective on what was going on. But from that perspective, it felt like money was really weaponized. It was a tool that my parents used to, hurt each other, get back at each other, and they kind of put their kids in the middle a lot. Where if I asked for something, I asked my mom, and she'd say, "Well, for new shoes or a new bike or whatever." She's like, "No, go ask your dad. He's got all the money." And I'd ask my dad, and he's like, "Well, no, I give your mom all this child support and alimony. She's got all my money, so go ask her." And you'd be in this game of financial chicken all the time to see who's going to pay for something. And after a while, it was such a fight. You just stopped asking for stuff. And I found like my middle class or friend, I had a good friend whose dad was a plumber and buys him a new car when he's 16. Like I got to go out there and sling burgers at Wendy's to get the money to go buy a car, which is not a bad life lesson in some ways, but there's some resentment around like my parents are flying over the world, they're living in McMansions, and like there's nothing coming my way. All my brothers and I, we all kind of rejected that world of materialism we all took a vow of poverty in different respects. So I ran off to
Yeah.
go and join a monastery. I have a twin brother. He ran off and became a homesteader in upstate Vermont, joined an Abenaki Native American tribe up there. They kind of adopted him a bit. And so he lived with them for many years, living off the land. And then my older brother ran off and joined a grunge band in Seattle. And so we all basically kind of were took that vow of poverty in very different ways. We just basically it was a great way to kind of give our parents the middle finger in a rejection of what
Yeah.
we thought were their values. Being a monk couldn't be more opposite from the way I was raised. It was a pretty good way to annoy and flabbergast my parents, as well as find some spiritual, motivations behind it, of course, as well. So that kind of gives you
Yeah.
the flavor of some of the money trauma that I had to go through,
And it
and then
also,
realize that so I had this very avoidant mentality around it.
the avoidant mentality. I'm glad you got to finish your sentence before I cut you off. But that's right. The avoidant mentality is fascinating to me because I think that, like the monk in your monastery who just felt like I'm just not going to pay any attention to money and therefore money's going to have no effect on me. I'm not going to
Right.
succumb to that.
Uh-huh.
I'm
And then
not
what
going to
happens when
care
you need
about it.
and then you need a quadruple bypass heart surgery, and insurance only covers a portion of it. Now, what are you going to do?
Right. And it's a rude awakening and it's
Yeah.
almost a punishment for somebody's like why bad things happen to good people. Here I didn't care about money, I wasn't selfish, I didn't want to be part of it, I didn't deal with it, succumbing to the pressures, peer pressure, all that stuff, but now I'm screwed. Now not that a monk's going to actually say that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
a reg
The Marine who was a monk would say that.
yeah, that's true. That's right. And the fact is that, that we either want money because of the things that we can buy with it. We may want money because of the things that we can buy with it, but also the good we can do with it.
Yeah.
We may want money because we just don't want to be hassled about
Right.
money or dealing with money. And
Yep.
so in all of the in both books and in all of your experience and your experience in the military, your experience in the monastery, from military to monastery would have also been a good enough story.
Right.
From monk to money manager is a great one, but the monk who saved the monastery, the money manager monk, all of that stuff is hooky and grabby and
Yeah.
good branding, right?
Thanks. Thank you.
But from all of that, what have you, what is one key takeaway that you have made about human nature and money?
Ooh, a
And it
big
doesn't mean it's
question.
the only thing. It's not the only thing we're talking about. But what is one like big
Well,
takeaway?
for me, it was like I would bookend my journey with two quotes. The first, my first mentality was that of St. Paul, who said that the love of money is the root of all evil. And first of all, we could parse that out from the Greek. I actually studied ancient Greek quite a bit, and there's many different words for love in ancient Greek, and there's only one word for it in English. So it gets we misunderstand, I think, what St. Paul meant by that, and I certainly did as well. That there's a avaricious, sort of greedy love of money, but then there's also this higher love of money, what we call agape in Greek, that I think is possible, and that what money can be part of your spiritual practice, and that when you have a healthy relationship to money, and well, here's the biggest insight maybe is that in order to have a healthy relationship with money, you need to have a healthy relationship with yourself. It starts there. It starts with self-knowledge and self-reflection. And so you can't, the Enneagram is this great tool for self knowledge. And then I'm just applying it to money, but you can apply it to anything. It applies to every aspect of your life. And I'm just narrowing it down to this one venue to give people clarity. But now the other quote I would say that would sort of bookend my journey is going from, well, because this is how I misinterpreted St. Paul. I said, so if the love of money is root of all evil, then what's the appropriate response to something that's, what's the opposite of loving money? Would be the opposite would be to hate it. And it's
Yeah,
actually a false dichotomy. It's like, no, it's about coming to a higher love of money.
right.
And then I'm sort of now or in the camp of Mark Twain, who humorously said, it's the lack of money that's the root of all evil. And I think that's really true, that there's more suffering created in the world from not having money than it is from not having money than it is from having it. And so there's no suffering free path in life. You're gonna suffer no matter which way you go. But the problems of the wealthy are much easier to navigate, I would say, than the problems of the poor, because poor people will get hit with this laundry list of horrible things that you don't want to have in life. Like it's the best predictor of your mortality is your socioeconomic status, because all these metrics like track with your income level. So like poor people have high rates of obesity, alcoholism, addiction, domestic violence, injury, illness, mental illness, all these things that you don't want get worse because of the stress of being poor puts on people. And so I kind of sometimes call myself a self-proclaimed suffering prevention specialist. That's my job, is really to help
Uh-huh.
prevent the suffering that
Yeah.
the lack of money or and now in this new book, what I'm really excited about is or the misuse of wealth can have. So it's both extremes, like helping people who have money use it more ethically and more in a more sustainable way so they can have more love in their lives and connection and community. And also people who are poor or maybe middle class and need to up their game a little bit so that they can have the financial freedom and security they need, not just for your selfish vacations are great and being able to sit in a tropical island sipping pina coladas is nice for a weekend. But like, okay, now what are you going to do with this wealth with the rest of your life? Like, how are you going to use it as a tool for love and service to fix the crack in the world that you were uniquely born to fix? So I don't know if that gets to your question, kind of a little roundabout way, but I hope I got
Yeah,
to something there.
but it's good stuff, nonetheless, because my mind goes round and round when it comes to the issue of, is fear good or bad? You know what I mean? Is fear of,
Right,
like, we're afraid of what's going to happen if we don't have enough money.
right,
We also wonder, like, there are people, I know people who are just worriers,
yeah,
and they're just worried, and maybe they're not worried 6 months in advance, but when it comes down to the wire
yeah,
and things are scary about money, they do start to get really wound up,
yeah,
and I can understand it. And then there are people who don't seem to have the fear of money.
yeah,
And you can't really tell, is it always, if you're not having a heart attack, maybe it's working out.
hmm,
Or if you are worried to the point that you take action and you fix it, maybe
hmm,
it's working out.
yep,
And so if you got rid of the fear, maybe you wouldn't fix it and maybe it wouldn't work out for your family.
right,
If you don't sweat it and you're just not that type of person, you're not very high strung, you're like, it's always like people will say, in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a strong stomach, right? You have a
yeah,
stomach for it. And that's
yeah.
very true. But so maybe the success that someone has as an entrepreneur is due in part to the fact that they have the stomach for it. And so fear doesn't enter the equation. But on some level, maybe it does. What's your take on fear and whether it's a good thing?
Well, it's both good and bad. It can be a great motivator, and it can be also be cripple you with anxiety. So it's not. It just depends on the circumstance and your personality type. And so, yeah, so the Enneagram really is based on three core emotions, which is fear, anger, and sadness or shame. And so there's three personality types in the Enneagram that are fear-based. And maybe that would be, if you want to go into how that works a little bit, I could explain that. But essentially, the simplest answer to your question is all emotions are good. They all serve a purpose. And so they're trying to teach you something. And yet it just depends on your on whether you're allowing that fear to cripple you into paralysis, which can happen, or is it giving you the kick in the pants you need to motivate you to make the changes that need to happen in order for you to have the life that you want to live. So I wouldn't, it depends on the circumstance and the person.
Yeah. And I would say that really is at the core of it, is like, look, let's look at it this way. What do you want? Not what does society demands of you, or what do you need, or because, and if we're, for example, not, if we haven't decided that we're going to just drop out of society and do whatever, you know, Lost in America is a great movie, the Albert Brooks movie. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
But you might enjoy it, Doug, because
Yeah.
it's about a couple that, it was obviously from the 80s, the movie,
Yeah.
and it was a couple that drops out of society. They have good jobs, they're very preppy and so forth, but they decide they're going to drop out of society. And they realize that life dropping out of society isn't all it's cracked up to be. It's not always so much fun.
Nope.
Um, so that's why I think you'll enjoy it. But the question that it begs is, if you're not going to drop out of society and you're going to be in society, then you're going to have to play by certain rules, and
Absolutely.
certain things that you wish weren't important are going to be important to you. And you're not going to have the luxury to say, well, financial pressure is an illusion. It doesn't mean you have to live in a McMansion, right? You can say, I just want to get to this point, but then maybe that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, you say, well, I just want to survive. Then you have that survival mentality, which is
Yeah.
not great for wealth. If you
Right.
want to be wealthy,
Right.
having a survival mentality won't
Yeah.
be great. Which brings me to this question, which is, when you decide that you want to do well and you want to have wealth, let's say,
Mhm.
you want to have security, wealth, you want to be wealthy, and you've decided it's okay to be wealthy now,
Mhm.
right? What does it do to you ethically? In the sense that I look at a lot of people who are wealthy, and I have that story, like I told you, I had that story
Mhm.
about it, about people being
Yeah.
illicitly wealthy, but there are people who are perfectly
Right.
who do everything perfectly, but they are law, obey the law, they have good ethics, they're not going to
Right.
cheat people out of money, but they
Right.
also maybe don't have a lot of sympathy for people who don't have money. So they
Yeah.
don't necessarily feel that it's their job to do anything for other people, and that people don't have money because they simply aren't working hard enough
Yeah.
or
No.
doing the
Yeah.
right things.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that your socioeconomic economic status is also correlated to your zip code.
Yeah.
That if you look at where, if you tell me where zip code you were born in, I can predict with and I forgot what the number is, 60 to 70% accuracy, what your lifetime income is likely to be. And so, a lot of these things depend on the school systems you were raised in, the environments you were raised in. So people who grow up in real poverty are starting with a lot of disadvantages, shall we say, that people who say maybe grow up with a healthier community and with better resources and access to resources, especially education, and then all the things that go with that. So if you think that poor people don't work hard, try working their job for a week and see how you feel about it. Go flip burgers for a week and see how that feels, and tell me you don't working hard. So I think there's a certain uh, ego can come in at any point, and maybe I'll make two to answer. I'll maybe answer this with 2 points. The first one of the big insights that I realized is that there's no like be a good human being button that like or switch that flips on or off depending on the size of your bank account. Like there's no
Yeah.
correlation between being a good person and how much money you have. Like they don't correlate one way
Right.
or the other. So
Right.
if you think that there's a mindset that rich people are evil, they're doing this illicitly, or it's a trope, and I had to overcome it. But it's just not true. I mean, when I was working in finance as an investment advisor, I was working with many very wealthy people with many millions of dollars, and some of them were the most kind, ethical, decent human beings you're ever going
Yeah.
to run into. Some of them are not, and same thing true. If you it's that there's a sort of also this trope that poor people are somehow more. There's something more spiritual about that, or
Right.
there's something better about that. And then try going to a ghetto or a slum at night and see how that works out for you. If you think that you're going to be treated well. So it's just not, there's no correlation between wealth and ethics, but there can be, right? It's just, there's good people at every socioeconomic level. And the question I'm trying to explore is, well, how do you then what's that ethical framework that allows you to be wealthy and be a good human being at the same time and
Yeah.
bring those ethics and values together, so you don't need to feel guilty about having wealth, and you're also using it really as a morally neutral tool. It's money is essentially stored work energy, and it's a question of how we're going to deploy it to make our lives better and make the world around us better. So
Yeah. I mean, in Fiddler on the Roof, there's a,
if I was
remember?
a rich man,
Yeah.
yada
So
yada
he
yada yada.
says to the Tevye character says he's talking to God, and that's one of the
Uh-huh.
things I've always loved about that movie, even since I was
Yeah,
a kid, is the way
yeah,
he kind of he's talking to the audience. He breaks the
yeah,
fourth wall somewhat, but he's
yeah.
kind of also talks to God. And he says, there's no shame in being
Poor,
poor.
Right.
He
But it's no
said,
great honor either.
but it's no great honor either, right? Which is great. And I think the if I were a rich man, if I were a wealthy man, so the subhead from Monk to Money Manager book is financial guide, former monk's financial guide to becoming a little bit wealthy and why that's okay. So let's talk about your brand now as, a money manager who
Mhm.
was a monk turned money manager, and the goal of your brand. What is your goal overall at this moment in time in the spring to summer of 2025? What is your goal? What is the goal of your brand, let's say?
Goal of my brand is to, I think I said it earlier, but I'm kind of repeating myself a bit, but it's to help people have a healthier relationship with themselves so they can have a healthier relationship towards money and to really understand this, how your brain works. What are the ego defense mechanisms that you have that are helping you in many ways and help you survive in this world, but also maybe driving your life into a ditch in certain ways. And so to understand basically the user's manual for your brain so that you can live the life you really want to live and be the healthy expression of yourself. And so that you can have a life filled with more abundance, more wealth, more love, more connection, more community, and be of more service in the world.
Now I will ask you, do you feel that you've achieved not the purpose of your brand, which is to help people achieve
Yeah.
that, but have you achieved that in your own
Oh,
life?
well, I mean, there's this thing. So there's this one thing. I go back to Aristotle. He had these lists of what he called logical fallacies. And so I forgot the name of it in Latin. Post hoc ergo prop. No, that's not it. Anyway, my Latin sucks. But essentially, he says that if the person who's speaking a truth to you, if it's true, it doesn't matter whether the person sharing that wisdom is a hypocrite or not. Like, for example, I could tell you, don't go out there and drunken driving is a terrible thing. And I could, get up on stage and tell you all the horrible things about that. I could also be an alcoholic who goes out there and drinks and drives, right? The message is true, even if the person sharing the message is a bit of a hypocrite.
Right,
And
right,
right, it doesn't invalidate the message. And so I don't want to put
right,
myself up on this pedestal of moral purity or financial purity and tell it, oh, I've got it all figured out. I'm perfect, and
right.
my life is fantastic in all these areas. I'm right in the trenches with you, and I think that's where why I think my books are so helpful for people is because I know what you're going through because I'm in it there too, and I've been there, and in some many ways my financial life and my personal life have improved dramatically over the years, and yet there's some real areas for growth for me that I'm still struggling with. And so it's that I'm in the trenches. I've suffered these things myself. I've worked through them and I still stumble, but it's about stumbling up, falling upward. It's like, okay, you make these mistakes.
Yeah.
Can you learn from them and then get better? And it's a process for all of us. So I would say to your question is that, yeah, many things in my life are great. And I'm really have a lot of blessings in my life. And then there are these areas where I still stumble because of my ego addictions and my personality type. And I could give you all the lowdown on that if you're
Right.
curious. But so if that answers your question exactly. But things are good and they could always be better.
Well, I think that the fact that they're good is a great thing, that you're doing well. But I love what you said about I'm kind of in the trenches with you. I've been through this. I'm going through this. I understand what it is. Yes, things have improved, but I'm not perfect.
Right.
Because, there's like what I would call the Jack LaLanne school of personal branding these days, which is runs counter to what I preach or what I promote or say or espouse, I think is probably a better word. But the idea of here, I'm the big success story, I'm the big he-man now, and here's how you become me. Here's
Right.
how you become what I've become. And I'll
Right.
teach you the pillars and steps of what I do to be me. So I'm
Mhm.
holding myself up as an example to you, as an ideal, and you can be it too. It doesn't matter if you're just a scrawny kid, on a beach getting sand kicked in his face. I can make you into a version of what I am. And
Mhm.
that's a big promise, right?
Yeah.
And
And
further,
I think it's a false promise too, because you
yeah,
can't be me. be yourself because everyone else is taken, right? That's Oscar Wilde's famous
Yeah.
quote.
Yeah.
And I think really what Taming Your Money Monster helps you do is find out what's your path, not my path. What's your path to financial stability and security? What do you need to work on? Because your stumbling blocks are not my stumbling blocks, but I can help you see what they are and help you become. So Carl Jung has this famous line. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And so, what I'm really trying to get at is these unconscious wounds, these unconscious motivations and behaviors that are sabotaging your life in myriad of ways, but particularly through the lens of finance, and helping you to overcome them so you can be the healthiest expression of who you are called to be, not who I'm called to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I relate to that because I've been sensitive or tuned into the perceptions around money. Because, like I said, I had the same, bad money story for
Mhm.
a long time. I'm glad to be kind of rid of the story, but I'm still suffering the effects. So
Yeah,
I can't say to other people, look, I'm as rich as I want to be right now and come be rich with me. But I
right.
can say, I don't have any problem being rich. So, if you want to get rid of that feeling or if you have already shed it, I can teach you or show you or create for you a personal brand that
Yes,
will not make you an asshole, that will not
exactly.
make you a bad person, that you won't be a bad person for being the success that you want to be. But I'm not a success coach or a life coach. I'm a branding expert. So I'm a
Yeah,
consultant who can, from the point of view of saying what you want to say and being aligned with it and it being true, being the truth
yeah,
that you're
yeah,
selling, that's where I can help. Where you can help them is by showing them the steps
mhm,
to manage their money better, to obviously master money mastery, to me is fascinating. Money mastery isn't going to come from my on like I say before you brand yourself, know yourself, right? But I
yeah.
don't that doesn't make me a master of my
Self-knowledge.
finances,
Right, right.
you know, or a master of self-knowledge. It's a great tip. It's a
Yeah,
great idea. But when it comes to money, the crossover between us, I think, is that it's part of both of what we do. And it's also a very, very deep and integral part of who we are and
yeah,
who we were and who we are still striving to be. Um,
exactly right.
and I think that's, at the heart of why I've been so interested in talking to you now that we've met. When I first saw your talk on YouTube, I think it was at a TEDx talk.
Mhm. Yep.
And it's a great TEDx talk, and we'll put the link in the show notes for people who want to watch it, and you should watch it. It's an introduction to you. When was it done? When did you do that talk?
Oh, that was 2021, I think.
Okay. Yeah. And you share what kind of put you in this spot, what put you in this mindset. It's interesting because I think when I first started watching it, I thought, oh, it's going to be about a rich guy, a guy who was born rich,
Hmm.
but did rejected it.
Hmm.
And in a way, that's not what happened. What we've learned from your story, because now that we know your story, what really happened was your parents went through a really lousy and bitter divorce that did not bring out the best in them, certainly. And you and your brothers realized, well, this sucks, and
Yeah,
if this is what money does to people, maybe I don't want any part of it.
right.
And I think it's the parallel to today, and this is where I want to kind of bring it all together and get your thoughts. The parallel to today is that here we are in not just this country, but all over the world, looking at extraordinary wealth,
Yeah,
incredible wealth, billions of dollars, billions and billions of dollars, to where we've now reached that, like I remember being a kid and it's like, okay, So what's $1 million? What's $1 trillion? Right? $1 billion, a trillion. What's a gazillion dollars? Well, we're now at the place where we're this country is operated by people for whom personally billions of dollars or $1 trillion aren't enough. Like that's the
Right.
irony. How are we supposed to take seriously prescriptions from people about our own wealth management or our own how we're going to do, how are we as the citizens of a country going to do when the people who run the country want all the money for themselves?
Right.
Is would
Yeah.
be, and you don't have to agree with that assessment. That's my assessment.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you, as someone who went through this thing of this ugly money, not the stories, but the ugliness of money, this ugly side of wealth, right? Who's seen that, who's seen people use money to hurt one another and have hurt other people, including their children. And now you're trying to help people manage money better. You're trying to work your way back to where
Mhm.
money has the healthy balance it should have in people's lives. Um,
Mhm.
but what's your take on the society in which we now find ourselves, where on the one hand we're being promised that we're going to have trillions of dollars, don't worry about it, you're going to be fine, you're going to have more money than you know what to do with, and at the same time, the people who are telling us that, in my opinion, seem to be wanting all the money
Yeah.
they can possibly
Yep.
hoard into their
Because
into their
they got their
mouth.
they're running off of their money monsters. Right? They have these
Yeah.
unconscious wounds. Their money monsters are running amok and unchecked, and it's causing suffering for the world around them. And so, and I would just add one other piece to you did a great job of summarizing my story. I would just add one other part to it, which is I also saw the pain and suffering that poverty produces. So I saw the
Right.
pain of
Yeah.
misapplied wealth, but I also saw the pain of poverty. And it's like they both suck. And so it's like, how do we avoid both extremes? Like, it's not, there's got to be a healthier way forward for all of us. And to respond to your question about the macroeconomic situation that we find ourselves in, it's a very hard question. And it's also one that I can't answer because all I can really say to it is you got to do the best you can with what you got. We find ourselves at a very chaotic and confusing and scary point in history with a great deal of geopolitical unrest and a lot of political craziness on all sides of the aisle. Like we could point fingers any direction that you want to look. But at the end of the day, you and I don't have a whole lot of control over those big macroeconomic issues. So it's the question is how do you navigate it with as much grace and dignity as you can, given the situation that you find yourself in? And so, yeah, I think you're right about so many of the problems that we're facing in our country. And yet, what are you going to do about it? You're going to wring your hands and just throw in the towel and give up? Like that doesn't seem like a good. And I also don't want to go join that kind of club. Essentially, I wouldn't mind being a multi-billionaire or trillionaire. Nothing wrong with that. Essentially,
Right.
but and we do see some people in that club who are doing really great things with their wealth, and they should be applauded for that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to paint them all with the same brush, but at the same time, there's those unchecked money anxious money monsters are people who want all the wealth and all the power, and they can become quite tyrannical in that obsession and causing unnecessary suffering for the world, and that's just not a good thing. But we need to at least have some tools to call it out and be able to know what it is and try to avoid it in ourselves.
Yeah. And as a podcaster, as a branding person, as someone who's like a student of, I was a sociology minor, I had a sociology minor in college. And I'm fascinated by human nature, human psychology, which you are as well. Um, but I see this segmentation that's interesting, which is that there are people uh, who are like, the broligarchs, what we'll call the brolig, what or everyone's calling the broligarchs, the
Right.
Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, and those people, uh, who a lot of us are starting to feel kind of give billionaires a bad name, right?
Right.
Uh, and then there are, the Bill Gates and the Mark Cubans of the world,
Yeah.
and many more, many others,
Yeah.
and Springsteen. I love the fact that Donald Trump, who's so pissed off at Bruce Springsteen for telling it like it is,
Hmm.
uh, it's not like he's punching down. He's
Yeah.
punching up.
Yeah.
Springsteen is a billionaire too,
Mhm.
and Seinfeld's a billionaire too, and Mark Cuban's a billionaire too. And the people that that Trump is kind of, and so is Taylor Swift, right? So the people that Trump is afraid of, which is really everybody. I mean, Trump's afraid of everybody. He's
Right.
afraid of he's afraid of anybody he can't step on. He's
Yeah.
afraid of
And
Putin. He's afraid of Bruce Springsteen. He's afraid. But
right.
someone like Bruce Springsteen, who earned his wealth
Yeah.
through hard work not slave labor, certainly. He's
Yeah.
been the master of his own destiny. But I mean, the dude's been on the road for decades playing to audiences and
Mhm.
delighting audiences. And I think that's what Trump really hates and is really afraid of is people who
Yeah.
are beloved. There's
Yeah.
nothing he hates more than people who are beloved. I don't mean to like get on a soapbox, but with this
Right.
season, I'm allowing ourselves, to have a little more freedom
Yeah.
in talking about this stuff. And so, my final question to you, and you can answer it, not just answer it, but, you know, add some final thoughts, any thoughts that this has brought up for you. As a brand, do you feel that you're a view of the political or the socio-political or the economic-political landscape is that it matters where somebody falls on that, or can anyone in any position with any take on the current landscape benefit from reading your book or be in a place to
Yeah.
appreciate the books?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, the hardest intellectual challenge for me of writing this book was to write it in a way that anyone could appreciate it. Doesn't matter where you are on the political landscape, doesn't matter where you are in the religious landscape, that you can find some real wisdom and helpful tools to help you live your values, whatever they are for you. It's not my job to tell you what your values are, but to help you figure out what your values are for you and how to live them more fully. I think a lot of problems is people they say they have certain values, but they don't live them, or they articulate one set of things, and then there's a disconnect between what they say is they hold dear and what they actually do with their lives. And so I think if you can help people articulate their values and live them more fully, then a lot of these problems will mitigate themselves. And we could go into Donald Trump all day if you like. I'd love to do a deep dive on his Enneagram type. That would be a lot of
Yeah,
fun. It would actually,
yeah, yeah.
if you understand his Enneagram type, you understand so much about what's going on with his administration and his decisions. It's quite fascinating. So, and see what his money monsters are,
Right.
which are, it's a fun to explore, which we could do. I don't know how much time we got, but we could do that or maybe another show. But that would be a really fun exploration to teach people the Enneagram through the lens of a particular person. And then you could see how this plays out. It doesn't really matter where you are on the political spectrum. Again, I think the book is going to speak to it's designed to be a mass market book that anybody can enjoy and appreciate. And I think it's got a lot of humor in it and it's very accessible. I try to make it very readable. So I think people are going to enjoy it very much.
Well, I love that humor, unites us in a lot of ways. If we can laugh at ourselves, if we can just have fun. I mean, I do think it would be fun at some point to explore Trump's Enneagram, just because it's like, look, we're all human beings. I'm not going to say that everybody who's listening to the show is a human being, because there may be what my friend Monica calls our star friends
Yeah.
who are possibly not from this planet who could be
Yeah.
listening to the show. I don't know that
Sure.
this certainly doesn't go out on terrestrial radio. So there's a very good chance that extraterrestrial radio is enjoying this podcast at this very moment. But I love that the book is for everybody. There is so much to be gained by sharing knowledge. I am so grateful, Doug, that you've shared your knowledge here, that you've accepted the invitation to be a guest on this season of Yes Brand. One of the things that I'm doing with this season that's a little bit different is that I'm talking about the show from one episode to the other. So while this won't air until the fall, but this will be the first episode because this is the first one that we've recorded. And I didn't plan it that way. I'm not doing, there's no hierarchy of guests.
Sure.
But I'm going to, let's say in the next episode, say, oh, well, when I talked to Doug Lynam, he talked about this or he brought up that. We're going to tie things together and it's going to flow. And so the next episode will now be influenced by the fact that the previous episode was a conversation about money and life and ethics. And then that'll be really cool because then we're going to pull that other person into this conversation. And then as we leave that conversation, go into the next one, it'll be someone else. And as you know, there's going to be also a couple of group Zooms that we're going to do.
Oh, great.
And we'll have all the guests on a Zoom. You'll be one of the few when we do that Zoom who have recorded. Not everybody will obviously have recorded yet. And then we're going to do one at the end where we kind of do a reunion Zoom, kind of like a reality show where, except it's not a reality show where you guys are getting kicked off the podcast one by one. That could be funny too. But we're going to explore each other's experiences on this podcast and in this forum. But I really appreciate your being here. And I really hope that people check out both your books, From Monk to Money Manager and Taming the Money Monster. And I really do feel like, as they listen to the podcast and as they listen to hopefully the other episodes and go through this mini series with me, that our appreciation of what wealth can do, what wealth can be, it will evolve and mature. Because I just think that, like you said, I think the audience is everybody, because everybody has experienced this. Wealthy people who have been in poverty. It is a luxury to sit back and say, what are my thoughts on money? What's my money story?
Yeah.
Even someone who's struggling financially, it's a luxury compared to the poverty that's in the world. And I look at this moment in time as an opportunity. Everything that we go through is an opportunity. So thank you for being part of this. Is there anything you'd like to add in response? Because I want to give you the last word. So I will do what I do on my show anyway, which is to give the guest the last word on the show.
Well,
you get
thank you,
another
Hirsch, for great gratitude to you for having me on as a guest. And it's been a great interview and looking forward to the roundtable Zoom when it comes, and just to encourage people to buy the book, Taming Your Money Monster, 9 Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram. You can get it pretty much anywhere you look. And please check it out. I think you'll find it a very useful tool. And if you want more resources, you want to connect with me anyway, I also do keynote speaking. I do coaching, among other things, and workshops. So you can go to my website, which is DougLynam.com. That's DougLyn as in Nicholas, AM as in Michael.com. And you can find lots of freebies and a lot of cool things you can get off the website to supplement the book as well. So check it out.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.